And good morning. My name is Kevin Miller, not to be confused with Kevin Durant here on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. And if you're a fan of basketball, or even if you're not, the sports world and probably everybody else will be yapping about the serious injury to one of the NBA's biggest, brightest stars last night against the Golden State Warriors. It's interesting when you see these things happen. They're like a cultural event to the athlete at the prime of his game, and then boom, he is injured. A lot of people will be yapping about that. We'll have the latest for you as well. Also, as Maggie O'Mara said, our top story, Middleton superintendent resigns. And I was watching this last night as I was working on some blogs, new fresh content available right now on KIDOTalkRadio.com. And as I'm sitting here watching this, I'm going, what the heck is going on in Middleton? And many people say, well, Kevin Miller, you're ripping on Middleton. No, you've got the principal that the kids walked out to try and keep him, which never happens. It never works. Now you've got the superintendent who resigns. You've got two school board members that are now under recall. Is this any way to run one of the great cities in Canyon County, one of the great cities in the Treasure Valley? Hopefully the folks will get it together. I don't know why the superintendent resigned. I don't know why the high school principal, there was a lot of controversy about him. And then you have the school board members and people wanting to pick fights, allegedly. It's just plain crazy. And you want to impact politics. You want to have a civil discourse. And quite frankly, I think they all need a timeout and maybe a trip to the Oregon coast. So that's the latest out of Middleton. That is your Miller-Middleton update for the day. Other news of the day, we're getting ready for the Pride Week, and somebody approached me at the broadcast center, and they said, Kevin Miller, I'm surprised that your car hasn't been egged. And I go, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, your comments concerning the Priders. And I said, the Priders? And I said, well, what have I said that has been inappropriate? Well, you're coming out against them. Well, no, I think in America you can say that turning over the city to one group of individuals for a week is a precedent that is really not followed anywhere else. You don't have people celebrating a week long based on a lifestyle or a behavior. Now, they have a right to do this, and good for them and that sort of thing, but there are a lot of stories that don't get reported. And then, again, this person saying, you and those folks there, why don't you let them light up the rainbow? Well, I think people have the option and the ability to say, I don't really agree with lighting up the state capitol. The precedent has been set by the state government that the rainbow should not be illuminated, and yet there we have it. So I thought it was odd that somebody said that to me and said, well, you better watch out, Kevin Miller. They're going to get you. And I go, I don't think anybody's going to get me, but strange. And then they said, and these are people that apparently are liberal, said, well, you wouldn't believe what goes on at the market. And I said, yeah. I said, what goes on at the market? Well, there are people running around wearing nothing but pasties. Pasties. And I go, what? Pasties. And they went on and on and on. And I said, they're wearing nothing but pasties. And they go, yeah, kind of resembling what you talked about yesterday. These are people that should be covered up. And I'm thinking, do these represent the values of people running around apparently naked at the farmer's market? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, that won't be reported by anybody else. And if you criticize it, well, then you're a bad person. Here's Jared Max with the latest on the Kevin Durant injury.
The Golden State Warriors' one-point win over the Raptors kept them alive in the NBA Finals, but it ended the season for two-time Finals MVP Kevin Durant.
Ibaka trying to stay with Durant, knocks it away, and Durant's limping. Durant goes down holding his leg. Ibaka goes up and is fouled down the other end. And Durant grabbing that right leg.
Early second quarter last night on ABC, Durant went down on the same lower leg injury that kept him out over a month before last night's return.
Kevin had it's an Achilles injury.
Warriors general manager Bob Myers emotionally shaken. ESPN reports it to be a likely torn Achilles, an injury that could keep Durant out nearly a year. He'll have an MRI today. The Warriors host Game 6 Thursday, their last game ever at Oracle Arena in Oakland. Jared Max, Fox News.
So there we have the stories of what everybody else is talking about, right? Kevin Durant's injury. But when you talk about this week in the city of Boise, obviously we'll talk about it more. By the way, you can join the conversation at 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Give us your thoughts on the Durant injury and how much people are going to have that type of attention. On the other hand, this whole issue involving tolerance, which we'll get to. By the way, speaking of tolerance, New York State is moving towards lifting criminal penalties for sex work. That's right. Our own Kathleen Maslone has the story.
A proposal to legalize the buying and selling of sex was introduced in the state legislature Monday, even though it's not expected to get a vote before the Democratic-led Senate and Assembly adjourn for the year next week. Supporters say it's a big step in the right direction. The bill's sponsor, Assemblyman Richard Gottfried of Manhattan, says outlawing prostitution has only forced sex workers into the shadows, where they can be exploited, trafficked, and then punished for breaking the law. But opponents say prostitution shouldn't be legalized because it leads to severe long-term psychological and physical harm. Kathleen Maloney, Fox News.
So we'll get to that story, but at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, comes down to the idea of tolerance. And again, like I said, somebody came up to me and said, you better not say anything anymore or you're going to get in trouble. And I'm thinking, getting in trouble for speaking the truth. Getting in trouble where we're going to have people illuminating the State House. We're going to have the media celebrating. We have, Hotbox, is that right? Did I get that right? The place out of Huntington that sells the marijuana, sponsoring it, along with Albertsons Supermarket, sponsoring it, making the donations. And my point being is that when you're taking a look at illuminating the state capitol, that costs a lot of money. And if we're really looking at helping people, maybe you make a donation to help people that are suffering from some type of social anxiety, somebody who is a victim of a crime, somebody who believes that they have been discriminated against. Wouldn't that be a more proper, more fitting use of the 10 grand or 5 grand or however much money was donated? Now they're going to have a fireworks. And look, you're going to say, Kevin Miller, it's a gay old time. Why in the world would we stop people from having a gay old time? Well, there's a little thing called, getting too much. And I can't remember how it was worded. People described, and again, back to the sports analogy, there's a guy, this basketball team, the Golden State Warriors got, Boogie Cousins. I just love the name Boogie. So they acquired Boogie, and it was written in one of the papers, the Athletic, saying, that was more of a decadent type of acquisition. They really didn't need him. It was icing on the cake. So regardless of whether you agree with the Priders, regardless if you agree with Kevin Miller that I'm saying where are the straight people that are excluded from this event, when you take a look at illuminating the state capitol at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, why not give the money somewhere else? Why not, if somebody has been oppressed, like we hear the stories about, people being discriminated against because that's illegal now based on sexual orientation. You can't discriminate against LGBTQ+, even though there's no add the words here in the state of Idaho. If that's the story, well, hey, then use that money and use it for a longer period of time than instead of using it for a fireworks display and lighting the state capitol. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. A story that we first brought you yesterday, the state of California. Another reason why people are leaving California. California became the first state to provide health care coverage to the illegals. That's right. If you are a low-income adult living in the country illegally, the legislature provided a thumbs up to Gavin Newsom's $98 million plan to help 100,000 low-income adults. Now, the full legislature must sign off on the plan that would make such immigrants as ages 19 to 25 eligible for Medi-Cal, the state's Medicaid program. The deal was a win for Newsom, who rejected it as too expensive as a state Senate plan to include adults 65 and older living in the state illegally. So if you're a young illegal, you get free health care. Now, if you thought California was a radical transformation state before, you wait until this goes into effect. And you talk about a magnet for people to go to California. And, we have our fun with the people from California. Again, if you're moving here from California, please change your license plates, right? Please change your license plate. It's very simple. It's a matter of, how should I put this, cultural sensitivity. So Gavin Newsom, in his infinite wisdom, has decided to let illegals get free health care. Now, you talk about a kick in the face to people. What did we hear about Obamacare? What did we hear that, you're going to be able to keep your doctor and no one will ever be able to go bankrupt because they couldn't afford medical care, right? You remember that. How many people have gone bankrupt because of medical care, because of medical malpractice, because they couldn't afford their health care? In other words, the number one reason that Americans seemingly lose everything, and maybe you've had people do this, people have to pick between life and the end. And the end being that they decide, I'm not going to go bankrupt, I'm going to keep my money, I'm going to keep my house, and I'm just going to peace out. What a horrible way to go. And then you have people here in the country illegally, thanks to the state of California, that are going to get free health care. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'd love to hear from you next. Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Waking up on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone numbers 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Number one, should illegals get the free health care? Number one. Number two, a story that we first brought you last week. Remember, we talked about this with Senator Mike Crapo on this. Now you have Channel 7 taking a closer look, again, at the first story that we brought you here when we're talking about the look of nursing homes in the Treasure Valley. You have a list compiled by the United States Senate saying these nursing homes are not a good place to be, right? So now we have more than 400 nursing homes were named as poor, below standards, released by Bob Casey and Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, little friends of mine from the old days, worked with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to make the list public. Senate wanted to have a big goal on this for transparency. Now you have two nursing homes, Caldwell Care of Cascadia and Wellspring Health and Rehabilitation of Cascadia in Nampa. Both homes are owned by Idaho-based Cascadia Healthcare. And again, you have people from Cascadia talking to Channel 7. Really, it comes down to caring for loved ones, right? And it's just like anything. If you have big money, well, you live at the lavish resorts. Now, if you don't have the big money and you're getting help with Medicare and Medicaid because people paid into it, perhaps you're going to one of these facilities. Quote, my initial reaction to the list is, first and foremost, we're dedicated to transparency and the motivations that Senators Toomey and Casey were acting on are positive. Steve LaForte, Director of Strategic Operations at Cascadia Healthcare, told Channel 7, the information needs to be out there and families and residents need to have that choice. Really? Now they're saying we're going to be good Cascadia Healthcare and fix the issues. And they buy these nursing homes and they, try and rehabilitate them or everything else. They work with Department of Health and Welfare. I don't know about this. Cascadia officials were aware of the issues that their facilities faced before taking ownership, according to LaForte. Also, from public complaints or issues that the Department of Health and Welfare have cited, many of those stem from before the company bought them. Now they're saying we're going to be a good Cascadia and work to fix them. Let's hope that they do, right? Let's hope that they do because, let's face it, people that are young, people that are older, people that need help deserve the very best attention. And it comes down to what we talked a little bit about yesterday, which is the return on investment. If you're paying for these facilities to take care of your parents or grandparents, they should be doing their jobs, right? Traffic and weather together. Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's get you to work safely in our time. Our time is 6:23 on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave.
a 9-page list of more than 400 nursing homes in the U.S. Pennsylvania Senators Bob Casey and Pat Toomey worked with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to make this list public. The senators saying families and potential residents have the right to information about nursing homes they are considering.
There are 15,000 nursing homes in the country, and about 3,000 of these have a 1-star rating on their health inspections.
But CMS is working to improve nursing home quality through its Special Focus Facility Program, which looks at the top 5 facilities in each state that perform the worst on health inspection surveys.
These typically are facilities that have sort of systemic issues with quality and safety that has been discovered through their annual nursing home surveys. Yes, these are the worst performers on these surveys on a state-by-state basis.
So the SFF program works to improve care and boost 1-star ratings at those facilities. Included on the senators' list are 2 in the Treasure Valley, Caldwell Care of Cascadia and Wellspring Health and Rehabilitation of Cascadia in Nampa. Both are owned by Idaho-based Cascadia Healthcare.
My initial reaction to the list is, first and foremost, we're dedicated to transparency. And so the motivations that Senators Casey and Toomey were acting on are positive. You know, the information needs to be out there, and families and residents need to have that choice. What to some degree is concerning about the list is it's a list without a lot of context.
Cascadia says without the context of the list, people don't get the whole story. Steve Lafort with Cascadia says the company is fairly new and has only been around about 4 years. He says one goal of the company is to acquire some of those poorer performing and struggling nursing homes and help build them back up. So Cascadia is aware of the issues these facilities face beforehand. And many of the public complaints or reports from Health and Welfare predate Cascadia's ownership. Those issues and complaints are what Cascadia says it's continuously working to address.
We're dedicated to being a force for good, and that means if there's a troubled facility and we can take over the operations and preserve jobs, change.
See, and Mr. Lafort's doing a good job of spinning this here with the Cub reporter from Channel 7, in my opinion. So they've had these facilities for how many years? And they say they're going to take care of the people. Okay. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO, does it sound like the people are being taken care of? And I hope and pray that they are. But you've had 4 years to fix the problems. You know, regardless of what you pay for a facility to take care of a loved one who no longer can take care of themselves, there is a big responsibility there. Again, I don't know if we should ever start a series, but really saluting people that care for our people that can't take care of themselves. The ability to go in and deal with someone that can't remember you or that can't do basic things that we take for granted, that's precious. But then on the other hand, if the people aren't doing their jobs, and again, this is Kevin Miller's opinion, please don't sit there and tell us that you're going to buy more facilities in context. The context is you have 2 facilities that are on the bad list. What are you going to do to get them on the good list? Instead of just saying, well, we don't know what. I don't know context. I know that Senators Casey and Toomey put you on the bad list. And I'm sure there are people throughout the area that are very concerned about their loved ones. We talk about trust when it comes to where do you put your kid at a nursing school, right? And then you have the nursing home. Who's to say what happens? And when people say that government doesn't do a good job, this is an example of government doing a good job, right? At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I hope they get these things fixed. By the way, there was some craziness on Capitol Hill. John Dean has returned. That's right. The John Dean. Imagine that.
I appeared before your committee was July 11, 1974, during the impeachment inquiry of Richard Nixon. Clearly, I'm not here today as a fact witness. I accepted the invitation to come here today because I hope I can give a little historical perspective on the Mueller report. In many ways, the Mueller report is to President Trump what the so-called Watergate roadmap, officially titled the Grand Jury Report and recommendation concerning transmission of evidence to the House of Representatives was to President Richard Nixon. Stated a little differently, Special Counsel Mueller has provided this committee with a roadmap.
Why in the world would you bring back John Dean? We'll talk about it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So back to this list, listing all of these nursing care, these nursing facilities throughout the Treasure Valley. We'll take your calls on that, plus more issues. But quickly to Peter. Peter, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing, Kevin?
Not bad. And you?
Good. Just having fun on my morning commute.
Okay. What can we do for you?
Well, I actually work at Cascadia, so, you always do a great job of getting information out, and we can see what's gone on with President Trump over the years. The fact is, Cascadia formed 4 years ago, but just purchased some of those facilities is as little as a year ago. They're the largest healthcare provider of the state as far as nursing homes go. So when you take over a facility, it's sometimes difficult to move up. I've been in healthcare my entire life. I've got to say it's one of the best facilities I've ever worked at, and I do believe management has the best interest in mind. It is a obligation to care for somebody's parents that we take seriously. And family members, and you're never going to do everything right, no matter how hard you try. But it actually is a great company to work for, and I believe that our motto as a force for good is something everybody stands for and tries to emulate every day in the care that we provide to our patients. So it's not always everything as it appears, and I think, quite honestly, healthcare is one of the more difficult fields because you're on the chopping block every day. If your work isn't perfect, somebody's going to hear about it, see about it, know about it, because it's going to show up in what happens with the patients and how they do. So,
Peter, I appreciate that. We've got to go to Rachel Sutherland, but quickly, what would you say to family members that are concerned about their loved ones being at that Caldwell facility?
Well, at any of the facilities, if there's a problem.
The one locally, though, that was cited.
Well, the one locally was cited over, like I said, over a year ago, sometimes up to 4 years ago, before we took over. And it's, you can blame people for things that happened 4 years ago, when you only took the facility over about a year ago. So, it's a work in progress. You can't change cultures overnight, but they did do a good job of trying to put new staff in there and improve some of the challenges that they were cited on. And as the report said, I believe 90% of those facilities go on to correct the problems that were there before. And I certainly believe we'll be in that 90%.
All right, Peter. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Quickly to Rachel Sutherland, Fox News Radio, with the Mueller Report, Part 75. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Kevin.
So here we have it. John Dean comes off the bench for historical perspective, a lot of theater. I don't know if people were fired up for the NBA game last night or, fixated on President Trump's tweets. Did this get a lot of attention yesterday?
It did for a little while until there was that helicopter crash there in Manhattan, and then it got obviously less attention with all that going on. But I think, it was interesting to see him there, but there were a lot of questions about why was he there? What role did he really have to play? Because he admitted himself he's not a fact witness. There were no fact witness there. There were three other lawyers, two of them more left-leaning, one from the Heritage Foundation, I guess, to provide some balance. So you had a lot of Republicans accusing him of basically just being out to make money, pointing out that he really works the cable circuit quite a bit, has written books. It's kind of, as Florida Republican Jeff Gates put it, he's built a cottage industry on accusing presidents of obstruction. So, but it was fascinating. People who don't know the history of Watergate very well, might have been interested in what he had to say. And Democrats obviously trying to draw parallels between President Nixon's obstruction of justice and the claims in the Mueller report that suggest there could be some evidence of that. But people are divided on whether this really would classify as obstruction.
Rachel Sutherland joining us here, KIDO Talk Radio. Any movement on this, or was this just for show?
I think yesterday was kind of for show. But as far as movement forward today, House Democrats are going to vote on resolutions that will allow them to go to court to compel Attorney General William Barr and former counsel Don McGahn to comply with their subpoenas. So you have that. So there won't be this criminal, contempt citation or anything like that. They decided to back off of contempt after they were able to reach a deal with the Justice Department that will give them some additional underlying information from the report. Now, we don't know exactly what that is. Grand jury information you'd have to have a court order to release that. So it may be transcripts of interviews that they had with just scads of people during the whole Russia probe.
As always, a hot summer in Washington. Rachel, we appreciate you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
All right, Rachel Sutherland. By the way, if you're just tuning in, a huge, crazy, what should we say, hearing yesterday in Washington, D.C., where you had John Dean coming off the bench to give his historical perspective on these things.
Mr. Dean, how many American presidents have you accused of being Richard Nixon?
I actually wrote a book about Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney with the title Worse Than Watergate.
So it's sort of become a cottage. Did you make money on that book?
It was a very successful book,
How much
yes.
money did you make on it?
I'm sorry, I don't have any idea.
More than $1 million?
No.
More than $500,000?
I said I don't have any idea.
How much money do you make from CNN?
I don't really know.
He doesn't know the amount of money he makes on books or CNN or everything else, but he can tell you that Trump is Richard Nixon. Let's go back to the phones. Liberty Linda joins us now, KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller in the morning. Good morning, Liberty Linda.
Good morning, Kevin. Bringing back John Dean shows how desperate they are to get rid of Trump. They'll do anything. They'll say anything. It's just amazing to watch television today. We sit back and wonder what in the world is going on. What are the Democrats going to do next is our question. So they brought back John Dean. It's just amazing to watch it. I didn't have television for 8 years, Kevin. Didn't watch any. And now coming down here and I watch television all the time, I notice, like even on the Fox News and other news stations, how risque the women are dressing now. Their skirts are shorter, their blouses are lower, and on all commercials they're that way too. Most people don't notice it, but I do because I didn't watch television for 8 years. So I don't know any of your listeners have noticed that as well.
What about the women?
About the women and how, risque the dressing is. It's shorter skirts and lower blouses. I was amazed when I started watching even the news. So anyway, I thought I'd bring that up. And,
wow, that's out of the blue.
It is out of the blue, but it's truthful.
Well, what do you make of the and that's one of my favorite topics of all time is just how people dress. But Liberty Linda with us, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. What do you make of this situation where the Californians are giving the illegals free health care?
It's unbelievable. I mean, the people that live here in the United States are having such a hard time. And now they're giving the illegals that are coming into our country, who are, coming in to vote for the Democrats, of course, and then the Democrats won't have anything to do with them after that. We know that. It's just crazy what's going on in our world today. And we're all sitting back here, and that's why we love listening to your show. It's like, and other people calling in, I'm hearing news from them as well. And at least there are people that have common sense, and they call into your show, and it's just wonderful to hear that people have common sense today because we certainly don't see it in what's going on in our nation or the world.
I just think it's ridiculous that you're giving free health care to illegals.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. No sense. And letting them in, I mean, I'm thankful for what Trump is doing. He seems to be doing logical things, but why can't we just put military on the border and close it? That's my whole focus. We don't need to let anyone into this country. So, that's my focus, and I believe in that, and I wish Trump would do it. And maybe that will be his next move, Kevin. I don't know. What do you think?
Let's close the border. Liberty and Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right.
Every morning.
Every morning. Liberty Linda, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. 580-5436, California. KIDO. Kevin Miller here, just reminding you, California becoming the first state to make the illegals legal when it comes to health care. What a kick in the face to every American. By the way, in addition to that, Robert Mueller hearings yesterday, the Democrats bringing in John Dean. Here's what the president had to say.
John Dean's been a loser for many years, so I've been watching him on one of the networks that is not exactly Trump-oriented, and I guess they paid him a lot of money over the years. No, John's been a loser for a long time. We know that. I think he was disbarred, and he went to prison. Other than that, he's doing a great job.
Hank in Boise with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Good morning. John Dean had another purpose involved in this break-in in the Watergate. Basically, there was a call girl operation that was operating out of the service Democratic politicians, like when they came to town or when they were in a convention or whatever. And his fiancée, Maureen, happened to be one of the call girls. And Dean was interested not so much in the different dirt that they could get on the Democrat politicians for using these call girls, but to hide evidence of his fiance's activity in it. And you basically, and this was on the notes to the other people who were involved in the break-in. And besides this, how could you have obstruction of justice when you don't have a crime? They haven't even proved that a crime has even taken place in here. Now, what are the tapes, the smoking tapes like you had in Watergate? I mean, this guy is a rat. I mean, he's the absolute human rat. I mean, if anything was a rat in human form, it's John Dean. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but before, what does it say about Democrats that they bring the rat to Capitol Hill?
They're desperate. They're wanting to try to keep the momentum going on this thing. If it's a race between time, whether or not they can get the impeachment thing underway, because if the indictments follow on Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Page, Clapper, the rest of the people that were involved in all this stuff, then the Democrats are going to be thrown immediately on the defensive. All hope of destroying Trump goes right down the waterside. So it's basically a race between the two sides. Who can get their impeachment going before the tidal wave comes with the indictment of the key people involved in the investigation. They're basically covering for Hillary, and they're also covering for these people, and they got to keep this thing alive. They have no choice. They're too deep in the hole to do otherwise.
Hank, great call. Appreciate you listening to KIDO Talk Radio, sir.
Bye.
Bye. Kevin Miller here. Coming up next, In God We Trust. Some good news on both fronts. Plus, should Idaho adopt what California is doing, which is giving free health care to the illegals? Kevin Miller on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio. Good news when it comes to In God We Trust. More on that in a minute. But first, back to John Dean and the hearings and more of your phone calls.
Mr. Dean, how many American presidents have you accused of being Richard Nixon?
I actually wrote a book about Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney with the title Worse Than Watergate.
So it's sort of become a cottage. Did you make money on that book?
It was a very successful book,
How much
yes.
money did you make on it?
I'm sorry, I don't have any idea.
More than $1 million?
No.
More than $500,000?
I said I don't have any idea.
How much money do you make from CNN?
I don't really know.
I don't really know, but I can tell you that Donald Trump is worse than Richard Nixon. Pete in Mountain Home, good morning. You're on with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin. Yeah, that's the guilt by association. I mean, John Dean is now their idea of a credible witness. I love it. I wanted to comment on the California, the sanctuary state now offering free Medicare to illegal aliens, and I'm pretty sure they all get welfare or anything else they want there. I would advise anyone who is a California highway patrolman or policeman or California state employee that retired and escaped California and moved to Idaho, you might want to start looking for additional sources of income other than your CalPERS retirement, because California is, I'm amazed they haven't gone completely bankrupt already.
I don't know how you can afford it. $100 million?
Yeah, and then their bullet train, for God's sake. Yeah. I mean, they really are going to have to start printing their own money like Venezuela did. You know, the cow bucks. Here is your weekly $1 billion cow bucks. It just, they're insane. They are literally insane in that state.
Pete, we appreciate your sanity. Thank you.
Well, I just, it's like watching kind of a slow motion train wreck.
But how frustrating is it for people that, can't afford health care, that live in America, that don't get in-state tuition, that don't get breaks, and we have all these benefits for people that are not here legally?
Well, if I were them in California, I would go in and claim that I just arrived illegally here from Lithuania, and nobody speaks my language, but I speak English, and now I want all these freebies, and I can't tell you what my name is. Hey, you might as well go for it. They'll give you a driver's license and everything.
Pete, appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Kevin.
All right. Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Dave. Appreciate that. Pro-Life, hang on. We'll get to you. Coming up next, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Again, some more sound from that crazy hearing yesterday.
This committee is now hearing from the 70s, and they want their star witness back.
Talking about John Dean. And there we have it. Instead of spending money on expanding our woefully inadequate infrastructure in the Treasure Valley, we have this show hearing that accomplishes absolutely nothing. Jerry Nadler, Democrats, libs, you should be ashamed of yourself. By the way, a little blog I put up last night, Transportation Insanity in the Treasure Valley. Why it's time to consider an outer loop, why it's time to consider more bigger, faster, stronger, longer, wider roads for the trucks, and why we're the only ones talking about it. But I suppose that's what we call job security. More Miller next. Stay tuned.